Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Monsters Den. I am your host, Pete Pardo. My co-host for this evening, Mr. Rich Catino. Welcome.
It's up again on another stormy, rainy, wintry night, as we've been getting a lot of these, right? When we do these?
Yeah, that's always seems to be the case. And here we are post-Halloween, and we still got the candles, we still got the lights dimmed, and we still got the spooky music playing in the background. So, you know what?
Where's my atmosphere? There it is.
There's
my candle.
There you go. Because, it can be Halloween all year long, people. I mean, that's just the way it is. And if you love classic horror films, it is Halloween all year long, right? So today's theme is Wes Craven, a guy that is one of the most notable directors associated with the horror genre since probably the early 70s, and specifically in the 80s, where he was just doing movies left and right. So many films to choose from. Rich and I just decided to go into the Wes Craven bag of tricks and pick three films that we dig. There's others. We're not covering all of them, but we figured we each give you a trilogy of terror from Wes Craven here tonight. So I'm going to have Rich kick us off with his first pick.
Cool. So I didn't pick one that was really, it's not horror. It's a sci-fi monster movie based off of a comic book character, the Swamp Thing, which probably people know that or remember that he did this because he's mostly known for horror stuff.
I completely forgot too. I've seen it many times, but I totally forgot that it was a Craven film.
So this is a sci-fi monster movie based off of that character. But it's a great interpretation. It's before they did that second one with Heather Locklear that was really dopey.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Heather Locklear. She's great to look at, but the movie was terrible.
Yeah.
But this is cool. You still have also a sci-fi horror icon here with Adrienne Barbeau.
Yep.
Right. And the lead guy, the guy that plays Alec Holland, Ray Weiss, he was in like a lot of 80s TV shows.
Yep. So
people recognize that face. So yeah, this is a very cool interpretation of the comic book. Not as elaborate, obviously, because the special effects weren't, capable of doing it back then. But the suit that he's in is really cool. And the story is about the Alec Holland character, who's a scientist who's creating a serum for plants. And there's a guy, what's his name? Arcane? That was his name? Got a cool name.
Oh, the bad guy. Yeah.
Yeah, the bad guy who's like worth a ton of money. He's got a really nice house out there in the swamp, and he tries to steal the serum for himself and try and do his own bad things with it. So in the process of trying to get the serum, that's when Alec falls into the lake after the cabin where they're doing the experiments explodes, and then the serum gets on him, and that's what turns him into the Swamp Thing.
Yeah. The Swamp Thing storyline, I mean, as someone who's read Swamp Thing comics for years, I mean, the whole storyline is very cool anyway. And I thought that they did a good job with the film. It's kind of campy, but I think that was the time and that's what they were going for. And, I think most of us were pretty disappointed that the sequel was as bad as it was. Because I think the first film is fun. It's a fun film. And it's got Adrienne Barbeau in it. So,
but it's not superhero. Swamp Thing's been connected to the Justice League Dark and superhero kind of things as well. So, but it's not like that. It's just a sci-fi movie about a guy that's a scientist who succumbs to his own experiment and turns him into the monster.
Yeah. And
he's not a monster.
Yeah,
he's really not a monster. He's more sympathetic, and he's trying to protect his girlfriend, the girl Adrienne Barbeau, the character she plays.
Yeah. Early on in the comic, the Swamp Thing comic was originally meant to be a horror title, but then they decided to make him fairly intelligent, and they really changed the story around a little bit to make it, like you said, more sympathetic. They actually turned him into a heroic character at times, and so they kind of moved away from the early horror elements. But I think that Wes did a good job of kind of trying to capture both a bit. It's a fun film.
Yeah, and I like the Beauty and the Beast kind of relationship that him and Adrienne Barbeau have, because there's a few moments where it's a little sad between the two of them.
Yeah, exactly. What year was that? I don't remember what year that came out. 82. 82. Okay, so it was early 80s. Yeah. Okay.
And the special effects were pretty good back then. The suits, the monster suits.
Yeah. He
You know,
didn't.
the Swamp Thing suit.
If you go look it up, he really didn't have huge budgets on any of those early films. I mean, even
No.
like Nightmare on Elm Street, which we're going to talk about in
Right.
a couple minutes, did
Yeah.
not have a big budget either for that. And these
Right.
films made money. I mean, Swamp Thing made money.
Yeah. Yep. And the suit for the Swamp Thing and the bad guy Arcane's creature that he turns into after he takes the serum.
Yep.
When they have their little showdown, his suit looks pretty good too.
Yeah, I thought so. It's good.
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah,
by any chance, not
good.
to derail the conversation, but did you see the Swamp Thing show on DC streaming service?
I started watching, and that's actually on channel 11 now. So I started watching it again.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I was amazed that they canceled. He looks great, and the acting was good. It's
looks really cool.
Well, they really turned that into a horror show, and I think it really. I was amazed when they said they canceled it after one season. I was like, oh, this is so good.
But what's cool is the Swamp Thing in this. He kind of looks, the facial things and everything, and the vines going through the suit and everything are a little similar to the updated version.
They're very similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for the most part, in all the Swamp Thing films and the old TV show and the newer show, he looks good in almost all of them. Which is good.
Yeah.
Can't say the same thing for the Man-Thing movie that Marvel did, though.
No.
No good.
Yeah, but this is a good classic if you're totally unaware of this that he's done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so my first choice, we're going to go back to 1972, his very first film, Last House on the Left. And, also, I don't know if it's so much a horror film. It's got some horrific stuff in it. It's more kind of like a exploitation film, right? And a very disturbing one. So this is very small budget. I mean, geez, I don't even think they had $100,000 to shoot this film. It was mostly shot in New York City, and the more scenic stuff, the rural stuff, was shot in Connecticut. It's basically the story of these two young girls who live in Connecticut. They decide to go to a concert in New York City. They wind up going, before they're going to the club to see the show, they decide to go down a side street to cop some weed, right? And they wind up meeting up with this young guy who is messed up with these total thugs, right? So there's there's three guys actually, and one girl, and they're just criminals, right? And they're hanging out in this apartment in New York City. And so the young guy winds up taking the two girls back to the apartment, thinking that they're going to score some weed, right? And then it turns out that the rest of the crew sees the young girls, and they're like, oh, what can we do here? So of course they kidnap them, and they force them into all sorts of really just nasty, depraved sexual stuff, right? It's not a happy or fun to watch film by any means.
It's not.
And they eventually wind up taking them up to the country, out into the woods, and doing some just really bad stuff to them. And they eventually, they wind up, without giving it all away, wind up killing both of them. But then the funny thing is, then they wind up walking down the road because the car breaks down. They wind up walking down the road for some help, and they stumble upon this house. And lo and behold, it turns out to be the house
of the parents
of one of the girls.
Yes.
Right. So, long story short, they wind up asking if they, we got the car trouble. Can we stay? They offer to have them stay there overnight. And then, eventually the parents find out what actually is going on there. And then it becomes a revenge film. So the parents then go to take revenge on these criminals. And that's the whole last half of the film. And the finale is just absolutely nuts.
That's the one that has, it's been a while since I watched it. Is that the movie that has the bathtub scene in it?
Yeah.
So good.
And the chainsaw.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah.
So it's pretty intense at the end. So again,
it is
sort of a horror movie. Again, it's one of those
it's almost like a home invasion kind of a thing.
Yeah, kind of. There's like I Spit on Your Grave, and there's a lot of these type of movies out there. They're labeled as horror films, but there's no monsters in here. There's nothing supernatural. It's just the horrors and the monsters are the humans, basically.
Or the humans themselves. Yeah, no serial killers or anything like that. You can call them, I guess they'd be like sociopaths, right?
Basically, yeah.
Sociopaths, psychopaths, masochists,
Yep, that sort of thing. The film did pretty well. It was, it was banned in some countries, highly censored in others. The cast is a bunch of unknowns. Although the guy who plays the father, you've seen him on TV shows and stuff in the 70s. David Hess, who plays one of the main scumbags, you've seen him before too, and he plays a great scumbag. But for the most part, none of them you've ever seen before or seen since. But as a first film, pretty impactful, I think. And this basically just set him on the way that he would go after that.
Right. So, and that's like that's no holds barred. They didn't cut corners on anything. They just went for it.
Yeah.
Because there's no real censorship for that kind of stuff at the time. You just do what you wanted.
Horrible rapes in this, and it's just it's not. And then they remade this film.
Not a pleasant movie.
No, not at all. They remade. It was back in the 90s. They remade this. I'm trying to remember exactly when it was. Late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Yeah, and they follow the same type of premise they follow.
Yeah, it's very similar. They try to make it more brutal, but I don't know. There's something about that kind of the grainy, like kind of like grindhouse feel of the original that I think just can't be duplicated at all.
Right. Like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Exactly.
It's like you're in that moment in that part of the country, and that's exactly what you would experience. So it's really hard to duplicate that again.
Yeah, and it's a lot of these remakes of these, really kind of dark early 70s horror classics. The remakes are like, slick and shiny, and it's just, there's just something to be said about these old 70s, really grimy, greasy, early horror flicks that you just, it's a product of the time, right? And you can't really replace that. You remake them and it loses something, totally loses something.
But you can, though, because that's going to be my next choice.
Yes.
You can do it. It happens once in a while. The Hills Have Eyes. This was another one like that one from that era too. It was like 77 or something like that. Yeah, 77 it came
I think
out.
so, yep.
Yeah. So this one needed an upgrade and a remake because if you remember the people in the movie that were the disfigured lunatics, it almost looked like Mad Max. And it wasn't quite what you wanted from people that were supposedly disfigured by being in the middle of the country and affected by bombing and testing, right?
Yeah, and they were wearing these caveman outfits and stuff, and it's just
right. But in this, they really, because they had the money for the special effects. This came out in 2006, so they had the money for the special effects, and they could really make these people disfigured. You remember the one guy that's in the chair and he's like leaning back, and he's got the huge giant elephant man head sticking out of the side of the back of his head.
Yeah.
I mean, the way they made these people look disfigured, it looks like these would be people that you would see on a trip in the middle of the desert, hiding in the hills.
Yeah.
Inbred lunatics. So that's what the movie's about: a family that goes on vacation, and then their RV breaks down in the middle of the desert, and they come across these people that live in the hills, and they're totally out of their mind, and they're disfigured, and they're inbred, and they're just looking to kill and destroy people.
Yeah, and it's weird because they got their RV is broken down there, and they're all kind of camped out there, and you never know where the freaks are going to show up, from what angle, the back or whatever and stuff, and they have the dog, and it's just it's well done.
Yeah.
And the violence and gore is pretty.
I like the way it is, and I like the way Wes Craven kept it aggressive and violent like the original one, but just updated all the effects and everything to make it even more terrifying.
Yeah.
It's like Last House on the Left. It's very unforgiving. Even in the remake, they didn't cut corners. There's some really unpleasant scenes in it when they start attacking the family in the RV. Really uncomfortable scenes, but it's very good horror. It's not like they're doing it just to be exploitive. They're doing it because this is what's happening at that moment. So I thought it was great. I would definitely go back to this movie, from time to time.
Yep.
This is a really good, like a grindhouse kind of a old school, but updated and upgraded, brutal horror movie.
Yeah, I like it. I remember I saw that in the theaters. I was like, whoa, that's like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
way more extreme than the
yeah,
original, you know? Yeah,
yes. And what's good too is that it does end on a happy ending a little bit.
yeah, true, true. I forgot about that. Yeah, and you
So
got to wonder too.
it's not completely, um, it's not completely depressing like Last House on the Left.
Right? Yeah, there's nothing happy about that. Nothing happy about
Yeah,
it.
nothing.
Yeah, and you got to wonder if Wes too was how happy he was with the original Hills Have
Right. I
Eyes.
think that's why they did this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know, I mean, he basically, from what I remember, I think he was, because I know he produced it, and I wonder if
yeah,
he had to sink any of his own money into getting that remade again, because you know, a lot of times, especially, I mean, I know remakes have been rampant for years and years and years, but you got to wonder. I mean, the
yeah.
original uh, um, Hills Have
Hills
Eyes,
Have
you know,
Eyes.
it's not a big money maker, but it made some
Right.
money. But that was,
Yeah.
you know, in the '70s, a long time ago. So.
Right. Right. And
Yeah,
that was one of his first movies too. It was shortly after Last House on the Left.
yeah.
It says here, I'm looking at the Wikipedia. I think it came after Last House. Yeah, and it was, I think, his second one. Yeah, directorial debut was Last House on the Left.
Yeah,
So this shortly came after, and he directed it as well. Somebody else produced it, but he wrote it. He wrote and directed it.
yeah, yeah. That was his story. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like both of them. I think the original and the
Yeah.
remake are both really good. I think the remake really hits home hard. Where I think the original is a little tame compared to what it could have
It
been,
is.
especially coming after
Yeah.
this. I mean, I know the idea is
Right.
horrific, but I think that this was pretty
Yeah.
brutal. And then Hills
Yeah.
Have Eyes was like a really cool concept. I always liked the concept, but I felt it
Yes.
was a little safe, and there was nothing safe
Yeah.
about the remake. Nothing at all.
No. No. Definitely, I would highly recommend seeing that movie.
Yeah,
It's one of the few remakes that works and was needed.
yeah, yeah. Just as long as the folks watching don't bother watching Hills Have Eyes
Second.
2.
Yeah.
No good.
Not so good.
No, that's
Not
bad.
so good.
That's
It's not a total it's not a total train wreck, but it's not, it pales in comparison to that original.
yeah, yeah. It's
It really does.
you know, if you can watch it for free somewhere, cool. Don't bother going to buy it like this guy did. Not it doesn't need to take
But
up a spot on your shelf.
but the remake definitely belongs on the shelf.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
it definitely
I
belongs
got both those. Yeah, absolutely. Yep,
belongs in the library.
that's right. All right, so my next choice obviously is because we seem to be kind of, you know, we're moving up. I'm moving up here. So 1984 is Nightmare on Elm Street. I think most folks have
Total.
probably seen this and know this quite well. It spawned 6 sequels and a remake and a
Right.
Freddy versus Jason. I mean, you know, Freddy
Yeah.
Krueger. This was a huge hit. I mean, I think I have some. So I think they shot this on a budget of 1.8 million, and it made at the box office like 57. I mean, that's enormous back in the 80s. That's a big money.
And it continues to make stupid money, probably, right?
It does, yeah, it does. And it launched another horror monster icon. So again, you've got,
Right.
you know, Mike Myers and Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger and, you know, all the usual suspects and Leatherface and Chucky and,
Yeah.
you know, all
Mhm.
these, you know, characters that were created. And Freddy is, I mean, you know, basically he's like this, you know, like burned dude, right, who lives in people's dreams. The whole premise
Right.
of the story is you got, you know, this group of teenagers who all live in this Elm Street in Ohio or something like that, and they're all starting to have like these nightmares, and the nightmares they're getting attacked by this guy, right, trying
Right.
to kill them in the nightmare. But the trick is, if he kills you in the nightmare in your dreams, you're dead.
Die in real life.
So all
And
these,
you know, it's weird too. And what's cool is that you always thought about that too when you're dreaming, when you're sleeping, because when you're sleeping and you're dreaming, it feels like reality sometimes.
yeah, yeah. So the whole film is these kids trying not to go to sleep, right? Because they know that the spirit of Freddy, who apparently there's history of him, that he was killed and murdered, right, done wrong, and he's out for revenge against all the children of that town, and blah blah blah. And you got Johnny Depp in his first ever film role in here, and special effects are pretty good for the although there's a classic scene where I watched the last time I watched it, I didn't even notice it. Like there's a scene where Freddy's going down into the basement and he trips like on the staircase and he falls. And then you could just see him land on like a mattress and bounce up at the bottom of the staircase. And it's like,
I never noticed that.
You got to watch it. It's hilarious. I'm like, my wife and I were watching. We're like, wait a second. I've seen this movie like 20 times. How did I never catch that? Like, how did they not catch that in QC, right? I'm like, Jesus, crazy. But I remember when this film opened and when it came out, I was in college. And I remember after it came to video, I remember a bunch of friends of mine, we were living in the dormitories at the time. We rented this film and watched it in like the suite, turned all the lights down and put it in the VHS. We're going back here.
Yeah.
And I remember this movie scared the shit out of me at the time.
Yeah.
I watch it now. I don't find it scary anymore. It's still kind of fun. It's still kind of cool. And he's a great character.
It's definitely got creepy moments, and definitely great cinematography. And I think Freddy looks really good because he's in a lot of shadow in the movie and a lot of darkness. Yeah. So it doesn't really, like the later movies, there's a lot of lighting on him and you see more of that humorous side of him. And this one, he's just pure dark and evil. Yeah.
And what's good about this character too is that, with Mike Myers and Jason Voorhees, I mean, they don't say anything. They just rampage around and kill people. At least Freddy usually has a little bit of dialogue. He's kind of witty, right? And all that kind of stuff. So that was a little different too, I think, for these, 80s horror character icons, so to speak. But, he's got the clawed glove and just, it's just classic stuff, right? So a very fun movie and an iconic 80s horror film. And probably, Wes's greatest creation, maybe? Possibly
top three, definitely.
Yeah,
top three, definitely.
Yeah. So. Yeah. All right, your next choice.
Okay, I think this one would probably be in that top three as well. Scream.
Yeah.
This definitely reinvented the genre, because before this, did we ever have two killers in the movie and you didn't know it? I don't think so. Anybody ever did that as a surprise, right? There was other things, other twists, but having two people that were in cahoots that were the killers, I don't think we ever saw that before.
I don't think so.
When I saw it in the movies, I was like, oh shit, that happened. Like I never saw it coming and no one else did. So when this debuted, what year was this one? Do you know?
I can find out.
My box. 90, I want to say 90.
96?
5 or something maybe?
96.
96, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, up to that point, we never saw something like that. And it was just regular kids too. You had the cloaked ghost face running around, but you didn't know who was that killer. Right. And then you find out that it happens to be one of your buddies that you're going to school with. Yeah. 2 of them.
Well, the movie is just as much a whodunit as anything else, as opposed to some of these other films where you know who the protagonist is, right? And it's this guy that's just going. Here, it's like someone's doing it. We don't know who. Is it some crazy serial killer? Is it one of us? And there's a comedic element to the film too, which I think was kind of new at the time. They really hadn't done that kind of horror and comedy, right? In the slasher genre, so to speak.
Right. But it was very subtle, though. It wasn't like the second and third one where it was deliberate. Right. And it was kind of poking fun at itself and the genre. This one, it was just a little more subtle, and it wasn't obvious as the other.
Yep, exactly. But a classic that spawned, a few sequels and made a lot of money for Mr. Craven.
Yep.
And all involved.
And another one coming too. They're doing another one. I heard they're doing another one also.
Wow.
Yeah, and the whole cast is back. The whole cast is back again. Courtney Cox and oh my God, the girl, the lead with the dark hair that they're always chasing after. What's her name again?
Oh, hold on.
David Arquette's back. Nev Campbell.
Nev Campbell.
Yep. She's back. Obviously, Drew Barrymore isn't because she dies.
Right. Yeah.
She's got a great death in this movie, by the way.
I know.
She's the first one to go. But I like this one a lot because this one you don't know the whole backstory and everything. They just give you the story. This is what happened. This is what's going on in the town, and this is how they're reacting to it. But you don't know why. You don't know the past. You don't know the future or anything like that. But then it became so big. Then obviously he had to build in, the backstory in the future.
Yep. Yep. I love the phone call too. The phone calls are great.
Love it. Because that used to be like the prank call you used to do when you were in school, right?
Yep.
To try and scare somebody. And then they did it in a movie. Well, no, it was done like that before too. But
Black Christmas.
The Black Christmas and When a Stranger Calls.
Yes.
Do you remember that one?
Oh yeah.
When the guy is calling from inside the house to the babysitter.
Yep. Yep.
And then the police call. They're like, we trace the call. It's coming from inside the house. That's like one of the most scariest surprises, and you didn't even see it coming.
Yeah, that's the exact same thing in Black Christmas too. It's the same thing. Yeah, I always love that concept. It's great.
Yeah, and they never really did that until again when you see Scream.
Yep.
I don't think I've seen that really in a horror movie where the killer's calling you from somewhere inside the house or something.
Yep. Somewhere up in the attic or something like that, right?
Yeah, before cell phones. when you had two or three telephone lines going to the house at one time. Yep.
All right, my final choice today is one that was not really received very well, and I think Wes kind of doesn't think too highly of this film, and there are a lot of reasons why. There was a lot of production battles between the producers and the studio and Wes, the director, and they actually decided to kind of reshoot half the film. He wasn't happy about it. They went from originally being an R-rated film to PG-13. I'm talking about the werewolf film Cursed. So I have here, this is the unrated version.
I never liked that one. I gotta say, I never liked that one.
You know what? I rewatched it again recently, and it's not a perfect film. It is a fun film, I think. Could it have been better? Certainly. I think there were some things about the movie that really didn't work for me, but I'm a sucker for werewolf films, so I was like, and it's got a great cast. I mean, you got Joshua Jackson and Christina Ricci, Shannon Elizabeth, and this dude who played Lex Luthor in the Justice League film. I forget his name, whatever the hell his name. What is his name?
Okay.
Jesse Eisenberg.
Jesse Eisenberg, yeah.
Yeah, so this was 2005, so he's pretty young then. It's basically a story about these two siblings. So Christina Ricci and Jesse Eisenberg are brother and sister, and they wind up both of them getting bitten by a werewolf, right? And then the whole movie leads up to them both thinking that they're going to turn into a werewolf, which they actually never do, but there is a werewolf loose in this town. And it's more like a who is the werewolf kind of whodunit thing. And then you have it, as it turns out, there are a couple of werewolves, one that you least expect, the other one you kind of suspect throughout the whole film, so to speak. But then you got the drama with, are the siblings going to turn into a werewolf? Do we have 4 werewolves here? This whole thing. So there is a werewolf terrorizing this town, but you're really not sure exactly who it is. Storyline wise, it's a little bit of a mess. The other crazy thing about this film is that they had Rick Baker, who created the werewolf effects for American Werewolf in London, did one of the old King Kong films, and amazing guy when it comes to werewolf makeup.
He's like the godfather of monster special effects.
He absolutely is, right? So he was, he was hired to do all the werewolf effects. And then for whatever reason, they fired him midway through the film after he had done all this stuff. And then they may have left some of it in because there's some werewolf effect, the costume that looks like something he would do. But the majority of this is this really bad, CGI stuff. Although some of it's okay, but some of it's not good at all. And I'm like, why would you get the best in the business and not utilize everything he's got to offer and then just throw in cheap CGI, right?
Yeah.
But in the end, it's got a pretty cool climax. But I think this film suffers a little bit from not having enough werewolf action, which I think we've seen a lot of werewolf films over the years for whatever reason don't do enough. You have these great werewolf films, and you have these ton of other ones that just never live up to the premise, right? And I think this one, I like the cast. I think it's fun. it could have been better, certainly, but I just figure there's probably a lot of people out there who haven't seen this, and if you like werewolf films, it's worth checking out. It's got a really good cast. Like I said, it's fairly gory in spots. There's a couple really cool scenes. The funniest scene though is one of the werewolves is, you know, getting shot at by the cops and everything like that, and gives him the finger. I think it's hilarious. And I'm watching, I'm like, what? Did that really just happen?
Yeah.
But it did happen, right? So
maybe that's one of those movies that could use an update and an upgrade. And
I guess. I don't know. I don't know. A missed opportunity, I think. And I'm sure like Wes probably looks back on that and saying, man, what that movie could have been. I would love to know like what the film was supposed to look like in the end. And, you know, they obviously tried to trim it up quite a bit to get the PG-13 rating, and it backfired on, because a lot of time, you know, in the more modern age of horror, a lot of times they think, well, you know what? We'll make a film that's less explicit, less gory, less frightening and shocking, because we want to get a PG-13 so it can reach more viewers. Well, that doesn't really work anymore. It doesn't. It's like the true horror fan wants to see an R-rated horror movie, right? Not some watered down PG-13 thing that's being made for 15-year-olds. I mean, that's right.
It's like when they did Deadpool. They did it right. They made it rated R. They made him vulgar and foul like he's supposed to be, and it was a huge success. So if you do things the correct way and make them the way they're supposed to be meant to be, it's usually a success.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. That's absolutely true. And yeah, so we didn't touch on every great Wes Craven film, but those are some of our picks. I think if I was going to throw in an honorable mention or two, Serpents of the Rainbow is really cool. I think kind of like a voodoo type of thing. I like that a lot. People Under the Stairs is pretty fun. I mean, he's got some stinkers.
I think that's getting redone.
People Under the Stairs.
I think so. I think the guy that made, I think his name's Jordan Peele. He's the guy that did Get Out. I think he might be doing it.
Wow,
correct.
Okay. Pretty cool. Because that's a pretty good film.
Yeah, I thought it was good, and Get Out was great. So if he does this remake, it might be pretty solid.
I'd check it out.
Yeah. Yep.
So there you have it, everybody. Some Wes Craven classics, and maybe a couple, you know, one or two not so classics, but still some good Wes Craven stuff here to check out if you haven't already. So everybody watching, if you have your favorite Wes Craven related film, talk about it in the comments below. See what everybody's got to say, what they like and all that kind of stuff, or what you think about these films. So there you have it. So Rich Catino will be back. We'll be doing more Monsters Den in the coming weeks, because like we said recently, these shows don't end just because it's not Halloween anymore.
Right. And as I'm wearing can you see my monster on there or no?
Lean forward a little bit. I can't.
You see who that is?
Oh, awesome. Anguirus. Wow. I don't think
Baragon.
Well, that's Baragon. It's hard to, you know what? I see like a little horn. Oh, yeah, now I can see it. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't think I've ever seen a Baragon shirt.
I don't think anybody has ever seen a Baragon shirt.
You probably made it yourself, right? That's why.
Right?
All right.
We have to do another one of those. We have to do another one of those giant monster movies. We were talking about doing another giant monster movie.
Absolutely. I'm all for that. Absolutely. There's no shortage of them, so we can certainly do that. Right. So let us know what you guys want to see when it comes to horror, right? Because I mean, Jesus, we've done. There's really no era that we have left unturned. So we've done lots of 30s stuff. We've done stuff from the 40s and the 50s, 80s. We haven't done a ton of 2000s and things like that, but we've done giant monsters. We've done Hammer. We've done Universal. We've done Slasher, all sorts of stuff. So there's really, maybe we should just pick another director next time. I don't know. Can totally do that.
You mentioned 2000s. Maybe you should check out, because we've talked about it before. Check out Terrifier. And that could be a show.
Yeah, I need to do that. I know.
Got to put that on the list of things to do, right?
Yeah, I know. I gotta watch that. Yep. And the second movie is.
And I hope the second one comes out next year. It's supposed to come out this year. It got pushed back because of the pandemic. So hoping for next year.
It's got my buddy Elliot in it. I'm looking forward to that. He's got a role. Yeah. So cool. So, Rich, you want to give some links before we let you go?
Sure. metalasylum.net, Brave Words magazine, the Metal Hall of Fame, and the Am I Evil graphic novel based on the Diamond Head song.
There you go. Very cool. And for us, you can visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. For Rich Catino, I am Pete Pardo. We'll see you real soon. Actually, don't touch that dial, because coming up within moments is Chris Allo, and we'll be talking about some cool 80s kind of supernatural horror films. So that's coming up. And we'll see Rich again this weekend.
Cool.
Rich and I are doing
the top 10 essential or favorite. I don't know how you want to categorize it. It could be probably both. Power metal albums.
That's right. So that'll be
80s, 90s, 90s, and 2000s.
So that's coming up on Sunday, and then hopefully more Monsters Den episodes next week. So stay tuned for all that, and we'll see you all later. For Rich Catino, I'm Pete Pardo.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.